Okay, so shining light and you other schmucks, you all ready?
Oh, jeez.
What are you doing this weekend, Dan?
You know, it's gonna be scorched earth for the next 4 years.
You know, the minute Evan didn't qualify, he became a different man.
I hope they got that on tape.
Mine was off, sorry. Okay, here we go.
Ah, what a shame.
Good morning. We will call to order the July 3rd, 2018 meeting of the Indian River County Board of County Commissioners. At this time, it is my pleasure to invite the Reverend Dr. Crystal Bajol, the Artistic Director for the Gifford Youth Orchestra, to the podium. She will lead us in the invocation. That'll be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance, led by County Administrator Jason Brown. And first, we will start off with a moment of silent reflection for our first responders. Would everyone please rise?
And so, as we continue in the spirit of respect and honor, let us lift our hearts and our minds to a place where we can know that even in this space, in this room, in this meeting room, the Spirit of the Most High is present. For wherever we are, God is, by whatever name we choose to use for that Most High, divine energy, spirit, light, life of life. Whether we call that energy God or Goddess or Buddha or Allah or Jehovah or Lord, by whatever name we can lift our energy. We can lift our hearts and open our minds to know that on this day, on the eve of America's birthday, on this pleasant day, we can find pleasantries right here. We can be delighted by the decisions that are made by this commission. We can be energized by the questions that are asked at this gathering. We can find joy in solving problems together. And we can look forward to the rewards of success as we recognize that each day, each breath, each thought is writing in the pages of American history. And so, gracious, sweet Holy Spirit, let the work that is being done here today be finished in beauty. Let us find understanding and clarity about the decisions. Let us seek to work together for the highest and best good for all concerned. And as we find those answers and do that work, as we find that joy and recognize the delight of working together, as we recognize the light that is shining through us doing our work, we can all agree that it is so, blessed be, so it is. Amen, amen, amen.
Thank you, Tom.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Reverend. That was very thoughtful. Appreciate it. Thank you. Commissioners, any additions, deletions to the agenda?
Mr. Chairman, wanted to ask, Mayor Howell from Vero Beach is got a pretty busy schedule this morning. He's kind of bouncing around, but wanted to see if when he does get here, if 14E could be moved up to accommodate his meeting schedule today.
Well,
where
I
we're
guess since he is the mayor, we could afford him a little. That's no problem, Commissioner. When Mayor Howell shows up, we'll finish off what we're in the midst of, then we'll go ahead and move him up.
Great, thank you.
Move approval.
Second?
We have a motion from Commissioner Fleischer, second by Commissioner Zork. All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries 5-0. There's no proclamations and no minutes, so that takes us to the informational items. Commissioners, the only thing I'd like to point out is item J is the schedule, the holiday schedule for the landfill closure and collection services, so folks will know. It's pushing everything one day back, so if your normal day was Wednesday, your pickup day will be Thursday. If you're Thursday, your Friday, your Saturday, and so on. But just to let folks know that that will be the holiday schedule. And there is a proclamation honoring Joe McManus on his retirement from the Department of General Services Recreation Division with 12 years of service. So Joe, thank you for being an ocean rescue lifeguard for 12 years and helping take care and protect the public. Commissioners, anything else to highlight? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and move to the consent agenda. Is there anything commissioners would like to pull for additional discussion under consent?
I'd like to pull G.
We have item G pulled by Commissioner Adams. And no one else? I'll go ahead and pull item I. And then is there anyone from the public that wishes to have a consent agenda item pulled for additional discussion? Okay, seeing none.
Move approval as amended.
We have a motion from Commissioner Fleischer. I'll second it. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries 5-0. Commissioner Adams, item G, please.
Yes, I think this is a really neat project, and I know James has been doing a lot of work on it, so I thought he could have the opportunity to give us a little update on what's going on. And he did a cool PowerPoint with fish that I wanted to see.
Excellent. For the record, James Gray, County Natural Resources Manager. What you have before you in this item is actually a bid for a push-button contractor, essentially to construct our artificial reef throughout each year. This is a 5-year contract, renewable each year. McCully Marine is the bidder. That we only had one bidder on this. McCully has built reefs for us in the past very successfully, and so the recommendation of staff is to definitely award the contract to McCully Marine and also authorize the purchasing manager to renew their contract each year. So that was the intent of the item. Now, a little bit of history on our artificial reef program. We'll start there really quickly. I know there's other items to go through, but our reef program really started in 1995. We were approached by a number of fishing groups and the local support at that time. Commissioner Fran Adams supported, and the commission going forward with permitting a new site. These sites in this picture you can see are just at that 10 nautical mile range, just off of Sebastian Inlet. There's 3 sites where we can construct up to 15 reefs, basically in the corners and also in the center. We have constructed 10 so far, and that was between 1997 and 2015. So with the success of that program, we've actually been approached again about a couple years ago, and we did discuss this during at a commission prior to that. The approach from the public was actually to have sites closer to Sebastian Inlet, and this is a number of reasons: fuel, proximity to the inlet, smaller boats, and more of a recreational benefit from divers' perspective and fishing perspective. So the county actually received a permit in January of this year. It's a 10-year permit. It's a 1,900-acre site, which is rather large, actually probably one of the largest in the state, which is pretty impressive in my opinion. There's 12 separate, which these purple boxes, there's 12 separate 40-acre sites within this 1,900-acre area that we're looking to develop approximately 60 reefs over a 10-year plus period. We've actually deployed one reef so far. Our inaugural reef was the Strike Zone Reef, which is in you can't really see it, but in the first quadrant, the closest to that orange box, there's a reef there. The reef materials for the offshore reefs, we haven't used this material at this current time, but we're planning on it in the nearshore reefs or that new complex. We recycle concrete. So this material that you see here on the barge and at the staging area was actually from our road and bridge compound. So this was materials that contractors had donated, and we've transported that and actually recycled it. Instead of going to the landfill or what have you, we've deployed that into a reef. And this is what 2 weeks post-deployment looks like of that recycled concrete. So you've already seen fish aggregate on the site. I have not been back out here just because of timing and so forth, but I'm sure that this reef is flourishing right now. So that leads us to the reef we constructed last year, the Strike Zone Reef, which is kind of this bullseye-looking target on the upper left of your screen. Just an interesting feature about this, although it is Strike Zone and it does look like a bullseye, one of the elements for everyone in the audience and watching, we tried to put one outrigger structure. In this case, it was a modular structure in a due north position. So if you're diving or you're trying to find it and so forth, you know where the due north location is, and that's where that outrig location is. This reef is about 5 miles offshore of Sebastian Inlet, 3.5 miles into offshore from the site. The new reef that we're proposing this year with this contract, if it does go forward, is Allen's Reef. It's actually shaped in a big A. The reason behind Allen's Reef was one of the anglers and fishermen and supporters of this program had recently passed away. So in his honor, and his family supported our program by donating $3,000 to our program. We've decided to make a reef, or Allen's Reef in this case. So the modulars that we're talking about are limestone, concrete. They're actually fabricated. Macaulay Marine fabricates them, and they're about 10-foot wide span, 8-foot high. So they're perfect for these art form type locations. So they're reasonably easily deployed versus dumping over to the side of the boat. So you have a more concentrated footprint, and spread. So this was the reef we deployed last year. And as I mentioned, opening up the opportunity for smaller craft and such. This is right over the Strike Zone Reef. You can see smaller vessels actually utilizing this site. So the word is out, and this is within a year. So it's in my opinion, it's been a very successful program from the inaugural reef perspective. So 1 year post-deployment, and the next 3 slides or thereabouts will just show you what the reef looks like. Again, this was taken about 2 weeks ago. On the site, you can see there's already started some growth going on these modules. Again, Strike Zone Reef. My personal favorite, they're sea bass. They're actually really good. I don't want to put the word out too much, but sea bass are a good fish to eat and so forth. And they're all over that reef complex, which is really good. They're usually the first recruiters, but they're smaller typically. This one actually is a pretty decent size, or legal limit, you should say. And
Just gonna say in that other picture in the background, you can see that.
yeah, so leading into that, interesting. So we have a recruited inhabitant. It's a Goliath grouper, which is in this picture, where this fish is probably about 300 to 400 pounds. It's a rather large fish. So they're an apex predator on our reef. So we've already seen a really good ecosystem actually formed from this barren or previous barren landscape. We've got soft corals and such. So, really the reef is taking off, and interesting to see over the next couple of years with new development in this site, how fishing and recreational diving goes. And I'll close with, this was actually at the safety stop, about 20 feet, 30 or 15 feet 3 minutes, we're circled by thousands of spadefish. So this was actually right above strike zone reef. So again, we've seen very different levels of fish, layered wise and such. So wanted to share that with the commission and the public. So also, I just wanted to, while I've got a second, these maps, we couldn't have had a thriving program without the assistance from Paige Lester in our GIS department. So I just wanted to make that known that her and Will Rice have been extremely supportive of our program with generating these really good maps. So thank you very much.
Very good. Commissioners, any Tim?
Yes, 2 questions. One, with it being only one vendor supplying pricing, did it fall within the anticipated estimate of what we would pay to do this type of work since we don't have other bidders to compare to?
Excellent question, and yes, the pricing that we had last year off of piggybacked contract with Macaulay Marine off of Martin County's contract, the pricing for modules were $3,000 per module, $30,000 deployed, up to 10. So that's exactly the same price that they quoted us for this new bid.
And secondly, when we use the C&D material from Public Works or other road projects, do we have a way of capturing the weight on those to count towards our recycling numbers?
We can. In this contract, it was just easier to do it by truckload, but we can estimate the actual weight of the concrete because it's typical structures, so
Right.
we
There's
can
some
count them
charts, I
and
think,
come out.
We
Yeah,
can
and
use by truckload based on type, but anytime we can capture extra tonnage really helps on our what we're
Exactly.
going to hear later under recycling.
And we're estimating probably right now, at the compound, Road and Bridge compound, there's probably on the order of 600 to 800 tons available on site for a new reef. So we will definitely capture that for future deployments and future reporting.
Great, thank you.
Good. Anyone else? Commissioner Fletcher?
Yes, James, very nice photographs of the reef, and I know that I don't believe Chairman O'Brien is diving at this point. I'm not, and
Oh,
you-
I mean, not today, but I'm still active.
okay,
I haven't been
give
trying
him the
to-
coordinates because it looked like he really wants to see more. But I think the public would like to see more, and I think that there's many applications of any photographs that we have. How difficult would it be to send the GoPro down and get some additional account of what's happening in the growth?
Not difficult at all. I neglected to mention that we have partnered with the Sebastian Lint District as well, as far as shuttling us out to the sites and so forth, since we do not have a boat available. So that would be the only limitation for staff to get out to the sites. But definitely we can do that. And we're also anecdotal information, as well as the diving community has been providing us photos, mainly on the previous offshore reefs. But as this program grows, I'm sure that we'll put more opportunities out there for potential fishing tournaments or what have you, where we'll get more information, more photos. But we are working on a new website overhaul for the program with support from the Sebastian River Area Chamber as well, trying to get the word out. So there's a couple things in development at this point, but as this program, now that we've spoken about it, I'm sure there's going to be a little bit more interest and such. So we'll need to get in gear and update our sites much more readily and post the coordinates, of course.
Well, as it should be, it appears that we have a diamond that's still being cut, and it should be displayed to the public as well. And I did hear you about the sea bass, so maybe we'll have photographs without the sea bass.
Yes, we could do that. We can take that out so they're there for others.
That's on a dinner plate is what we need.
Yeah, that.
I think I know where one is.
Yeah, yeah,
Check James's freezer,
yeah, exactly. So, excellent.
All right, thank you, James.
Thank you.
Commissioner Adams?
Yes, I just want to thank you guys for what you've been doing with this program. It's fantastic. I think there's a lot of application in the future for tourism and rounding
Yes.
out our fishing program countywide. So this is kind of that piece of the puzzle, and I'm looking forward to seeing it progress. So Thank you, and please keep the pictures coming.
Yes.
And with that, I'd like to move staff's recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Adams, seconded by Commissioner Flesher. Is there anyone from the public wishes to speak on this item? Reverend, yes.
Yes, I didn't come planning to speak on this, but I'm very excited about what you've shown, and what comes to my mind are the children that go to the Environmental Learning Center, and how wonderful to have this to offer to them, especially when there's so much other chaos going on in our community. I'm really proud that our county is doing that kind of work, environmental work, so I just wanted to add that since I'm here and I get to speak.
Thank you, Reverend. Anyone else from the public wish to comment on this? Seeing none, all in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries 5-0. Commissioners, item I is the Gifford Neighborhood 45th Street Beautification Project, Phase 2. This is part of the Gifford Neighborhood Plan, and the Phase 2 was going to enclose the canal that was lateral to 45th Street with culverting and adding a sidewalk and some landscape and beautification projects. Apparently during the bid process, staff was advised that the pipe that was specified for this project was in very short supply, and despite staff listing an alternative pipe, and we only had one bidder on the project, and that bid came in almost $900,000 above the engineer's estimate. So staff is recommending that we reject the bid. Not that we're giving up on the project, but we do want to rebid it and try to get the price more in line with what we expect. And I just wanted to pull this just so the public will know that we are not giving up on the project. We may have it delayed a few months because we're going to have to rebid, but I believe it's still the intent of staff and of this board to complete Phase 2. We just want to try to get that price down. So,
Mr. Chairman, I'll note that it's certainly my intent, and with the conversation with the county administrator, he noted that we'll be able to probably go with a few month delay to the originally sized pipes, which will bring the cost back down in the area of the original estimate, which I think is good. And, you know, delays like this do happen. I hope that the community understands that. And with that, given that you can't make a motion, I'd be happy to move staff recommendation.
Second.
Second from Commissioner Resort. Anyone from the public wish to comment on the motion? Joe? Good morning.
Morning. Joe Outlet, 4570 57th Avenue. I don't really have a whole lot to say. Questions have already been answered. We just want you to know that we were disappointed to see the rejection letter, but we understand the reasons why, and we hope to sometime in the near future to see the project proceed forward.
Thank you, Mr. Eilert. And again, I think that is fully the intention of the board, and as Commissioner Solari mentioned, that these things sometimes happen, but we're committed to getting it done. Good morning.
Good morning, Freddie Woolfolk, 4590 57th Avenue. I'm pretty much a messenger coming from the community, and some questions were asked, and I said I will ask them today. They wanted to kind of find out the bid process for the Indian River County request for proposals. There's a certain process you have for asking for bids to come in, and how many bids have to come in order to satisfy your request.
Yeah, bids like this, and we have our purchasing manager here as well, but generally these go out on an electronic system, and on something like this, you might send it out to multiple hundred potential bidders, and then there'll be a smaller number of bidders that request a bid package, and then generally a smaller number of that submit a bid. So it does get broadcast out to a very, and maybe Jennifer or Rich can answer how many hundreds of potential bidders something like this goes to, but it goes out to quite a few, and unfortunately we only had one company bid, and I don't know, maybe just because the difficulty of getting that pipe resulted in so few bids, but maybe Jennifer could clarify a little. Good morning.
Jennifer Hyde, County Purchasing Manager. Part of our process is we do advertise all of our bids in the Press Journal. That's part of our county code. And then we use a platform called Demand Star, which advertises to specific contractors who've signed up to receive that sort of bid, like roadway construction. Typically, I don't have the numbers in front of me for this one, but typically for a roadway construction project, Demand Star sends the advertisement to about 300 or 400 contractors. So, and then they determine based on the scope of the project if they want to look at it.
Okay, you asked my question to take the answer back now. Joe and I had kind of inserted that information just off the top of our head, but we want to let the county, let the community know that there is a process, that it is advertised, that it is, information is sought after. So that's, you answered that, I got that information. The next one, since you received that one bid, and you're talking about redoing that bid process again, if you receive one bid again, can you stop and accept that one bid, or would you have to wait till 2 other bids come in?
I would think that, again, you know, the board would make a vote on that with staff's recommendation. Just sitting here in the seat of my pants would tell you, if the one bid comes in a lot closer to our engineer's estimate, and I don't want to speak for the other commissioners, but we would probably move forward. If it's, again, nearly $1 million higher, we might have to rethink or you know, take another hard look at it.
You asked another question inside of a question when we talked about an engineering estimate. So the county does have a benchmark level amount that they figured this project should come in. So when someone submit a bid that is $888,000 over, that's immediately a no-no at that time. Is that correct?
That would normally be staff's recommendation, and then the board, you know, we went through this with the West Wabasso septic to sewer and took a, you know, second bite of the apple. It still came in a little high, and then we decided to go ahead and move forward with it. So we'll see what happens with this one. Again, I can't speak for what the board might do at that time, but we do have an engineer, and they cost everything out based upon previous jobs. So usually, you know, we hope our engineer's estimate is fairly close to the target.
And my third question is, I'm glad you said it, someone said it earlier, that the project is delayed and not denied.
That is correct.
That's so good to hear, because I can go right now, it's not strapped, it's still gonna come forth, but it's just waiting on the process to reveal itself.
That is correct. Two of us have said we're committed to it. I think the other three would say the same thing, yeah.
This project is very important to the community, it's very important to the county, and the main concern, I think, that will address your fears is the fact that the product that was recommended is in short supply, if not non-existent. And I think that was a tremendous factor for applicants not to bid on the process, because if they can't get the material, why would they want to engage in a contract, a bid and a contract that they would be obligated to? So I believe that we're going to see a lot more than just one with the adjusted specifications. And I think that there should be smooth sailing in just a couple months.
Thank you. On behalf of Mr. Adelaide and Progressive Civic League, we all had a meeting the other night, and we were saying how pleased we are with the county commissioners that we have. And sometimes it's not said publicly, but we really enjoy working with you all. You're very cordial in your invitation to see us when we call. And I think we're going to continue to get better as we go. So thank you so much for what you've done thus far.
Thank you, Freddie.
Thank you for what you do.
Anyone else from the public wish to comment on the motion before us?
Mr. Chair.
Jason, yes.
Just as a point of clarification on the pipe size, we may be able to get the other size pipe, or we may not. We're gonna, when we bid it back out, we will have different options. Some of those including maybe the county direct purchasing the pipe to save a little bit of money there. But we are, and to the main question at hand is this is precisely just a delay. We're gonna get the bid specs adjusted and then get it back out to bid as soon as we can, and hopefully be moving forward just a couple months later than we would be otherwise. So.
Thank you, Jason. Commissioner Zork?
Yes, and on those same lines, and I know the district kind of dictates what's acceptable pipe and material and size, and we know sometimes they're rigid in their answers, but maybe asking them if there's any other DOT-approved material that might, if you have two types of material, then that may help drive the price down if there's another option that's out there. I know at the conference many of us were just at, ADS was featuring some of their new larger diameter ADS type pipe that's now approved by DOT. So there may be some other options. I know the district is sometimes set in their ways, but maybe if we ask, is there an option one and an option two, either one would be acceptable to them. So when we rebid it, we could look at more the one material type.
Rich Berget, Public Works Director. We've had that discussion with the district. Our biggest obstacle is that we need volume, and you can't get that and have cover over the pipe. So for instance, ADS, while they may be able to provide us a 72-inch pipe, we can't get 2 or 3 feet of cover over it. So if a large truck pulls off on the side of the road, it will collapse. It could collapse that pipe, and then we'd be in real trouble. So and ADS pipe does not make oval pipe, and that's what we're using for number one, for long-term stability. Number two is the fact that because of our cover issue, we just can't get enough cover over the pipe to use an ADS pipe.
Okay.
And metal, we all know what happens with metal. In 20 years, we'll be doing this all over again, so I'd rather not use a metal pipe.
Sure. Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you, Rich. Any other discussion? We have motion from Commissioner Slurry, second by Commissioner Zork. All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries 5-0. No public hearings, no public discussion. We do have one public notice items. Mr. Reingold, would you do the honors, please?
Thank you very much. We have a notice of a scheduled public hearing. This will be for July 10th, 2018. This will be the second public hearing to consider applying for a Small Cities Community Development Block Grant, a CDBG, and one or more specific CDBG categories. This will be administrative in nature, and again, this will be a public hearing, which will be at the July 10th, 2018 meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We move to departmental matters, and we move down to human resources. Item D1, ratification of amendment to Article 26.12 of the collective bargaining agreement between the Indian River County and the International Association of Firefighters, Local 2201, removing the prohibition for light duty for pregnancy. And good morning, Ms. Boyle. Welcome.
Suzanne Boyle, Human Resources Director. Before you, you have an amendment to the collective bargaining agreement between the Indian River County Board of County Commissioners and the International Association of Firefighters, providing for light duty for pregnancy for our firefighters.
Very good. Commissioner Zork?
Yes, I have a question. On our language, we want to fully comply and provide this opportunity for them, so I want to get that straight. But in the language, we know asking for light duty, there's a second part that the employee needs to bring something from their doctor that says, I can lift 15 pounds, I can stand on my feet for 30 minutes at a time, or something like that. Is that directive in the backup language that you request light duty and there's a step and then you need to turn in this other paper from their physician?
Yes, at the point in time that an employee presents information to us that states, I have work restrictions, I'm seeking light duty due to pregnancy, that is the process that would be followed. We do not mandate light duty. Someone would request it and provide the necessary
Correct.
work restrictions.
If without that, we don't know what their version of light duty works for them.
Exactly. So we would look at the restrictions and then find assignment that is within the work restrictions
Right.
that have been
Okay.
assigned.
Super, thank you very much.
Okay.
Commissioner Fleischer?
This is a well-crafted document, and it's long overdue. I appreciate your hard work in engineering this, and with that, I'd like to move staff recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Fleischer, second by Commissioner Adams for staff recommendation. Commissioners, any discussion? Is there anyone from the public that wishes to comment on the motion before us? Seeing none, Suzanne, I will, and I think Jason deserves a lot of credit also for working with our union and the union leadership to bring this about. I think it is a good policy change, although it's going to increase some costs down the road, I think, but I think it's still the right thing to do. So with that, all in favor of the motion signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries 5-0. Thank you, Suzanne. The second item under Human Resources is for Legal Services, Labor and Employment Matters. Again, Ms. Boyle, welcome.
Here we are. We have been represented by Mr. Mandel for a number of years. I was actually asked how many years, and I could not find the initial record going back, but I know it's over 15. He represents us in an excellent manner, and in fact was a very important part in that last item that was before you. So we have been presented with a rate increase. It's the first rate increase we've had I can't even find a record of a rate increase. So it is a 5% increase in attorney's fees. It is lower than other area attorney fees for similar skilled labor attorneys. And I appreciate your consideration.
And staff recommendation is to authorize the continued engagement?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Motion by Commissioner Solari, and I heard Commissioner Flesher on the second. Any discussion from the commissioners?
I'd just like to extend our thanks and appreciation to the many years of service. Does a great job for us.
Yes, he does.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any members of the public that wish to comment on the motion before us? Seeing none, all in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries 5-0. Thank you, Suzanne.
Thank you.
Continuing on, under utility services, the first item is sole source for a Florida blower. And Mr. Burke, welcome.
Morning. For the record, Vincent Burke, Director of Utility Services. We have two sole source items. The first is a sole source for Florida blower down at our residual dewatering facility. As you note in the agenda item, this has been engineered and it fits the existing setup at the facility. You may recall that we're doing other what we call R&R type of facility improvements at the residual dewatering facility on the internal tanks. This is another component that we found is this blower. It's required to be able to remove some of the noxious fumes, the gases that build up there, and we're asking for board approval because of the size, shape, and the design that's unique to that application. So we're asking the board to approve $19,484 for the Florida blower as part of its sole source recommendation.
Thank you, Vinnie. Commissioners?
Mr. Chairman, happy to move staff recommendation.
We have a motion by Commissioner Solari, second by Commissioner Adams. Anyone from the public wish to comment on the matter before us? Seeing none, all in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries 5-0. Mr. Burke, you have the next item, please. Sole source for ABBA pump parts and service.
12G2 is for ABBA pumps, parts, and services. We use this over at our West Regional wastewater treatment facility. It's over its expected useful lifespan, typically about 7 to 10 years. It's been 8+ years for the two things. One is the internal recycle stream for the material that we return back, as well as the return activated sludge. Combined, both of those are just over $50,000 for a total amount of $50,458. It's integral to keep the microbes in good shape, and so we're using that as part of our DEP operational permit. But staff of utility services recommend that the board approve ABBA pumps, parts, services as sole source for the Alice Chambers pumps and waive the requirements for bids.
Thank you, Vinnie. Commissioners?
Give that one to Commissioner Flesher, and I'll second it.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Flesher, second by Commissioner Solari. Any discussion? Is there anyone from the public that wishes to comment on the motion before us? Seeing none, all in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries 5-0. Item 3, the well deepening at South County Reverse Osmosis Plant. Mr. Burke, welcome again.
Thank you. We have a little kind of like an educational show and tell that we would like to just take about 8 or 9 slides to walk you through here, but we're kind of excited about some of the work that's being done at the South County plant. We engineers are. It may not be as exciting as some of the other stuff that happens, like public works and some of the roadway projects, but we're pretty happy with what's going on down at the South County plant. So as you know, we have about 8.5 million gallon a day rated reverse osmosis treatment facility off the Oslo Road area, right next to the IG building. Here's kind of like a bad area on the bottom left-hand part of the screen. I'd like to thank Parks for working with us because they were very helpful in allowing us to put well 7 in the red circle. And so well 7 has been done. If you recall, well 7 has been installed for redundancy, not for additional capacity, and that has been put in place. Just a quick history. In the summer of 2016, staff went out for bid. We worked with the purchasing department and brought to the board recommendation for award of bid number 2016031 to All Webs Enterprises. There were multiple firms that had bid on this process, and All Webs submitted a bid for not only installation of well, what we're calling South 7, but the rehabs of 4 existing wells, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So they were in process of doing well 7, and then they were looking to do the rehabilitation for well 4. If you recall, based on the pictures and another item that we brought in April of 2017, there was cracking issues and casing issues that we had found when we did the camera system after pulling the wellhead on well 4, and the board did allow us to move forward with the installation of a replacement well due to the severe condition of well 4. So that was a cost of just over $1 million. We're happy to report that both well 7 has been completed. We have some inverter duty rated motors there, so we can basically run on pressure, or we can run on frequency drives. So we can run up or down, ramp up or down, instead of a fixed RPM like we have on some of the other wells. And well 4 is in progress with an estimated completion date of August of this year. And we'd like to move forward with rehab work decision based on what we found with well 7 and well 4. So prior to moving ahead with some of this work, we actually compared an older 2005 Camp Dresser-McKee CDM study of what was done in the mid-2000s when some rehab work was done. Typically, you want to do some rehab work sooner rather than later, and it's been some years since we've done some rehab work. And what we're looking at here is the pumping rate on the left-hand side in gallons per minute versus some of the different wells. And you can see the steady decline over the years, and that could be due to a number of issues, including but not limited to some of the porosity of the material as you're trying to pull that water through. It can tend to get clogged and have some issues with the availability to pull that water through. So you can see just from the graph here, the bar trend, that over the years from 2005 to the more recent 2017 analysis, where we've had a decrease in the pumping trends at South County. This is taken from St. John's River Water Management District. I wasn't able to put the logo in here, but this is just a general schematic of what we have in place. It's not exactly what we have in place, but if you look on the right-hand part of the screen, you'll see 3 pumps, and moving from left to right, the Florida Aquifer System. In this case, we pull from the UFA, the Upper Floridan. Most residential homes that have some irrigation pull from the surficial well, which is really about 60 or 70 feet down, but we're pulling a little bit deeper than that, below the confining layer that's been well documented. So just a quick schematic of where we're pulling our water from. Here's a kind of 2D version of this. Again, we're pulling from the Upper Floridan. We have limestone separated by a clay layer that separates the upper surficial from where we're pulling from our water right now at about 700 feet plus or minus. And as you noted, we had in there rehabilitation of 4 wells due to the reduction in some of the pumping that had been shown previously. So this is well 4R. This is the replacement. This is the new well. And it's a little bit busy, but what I wanted to kind of show you is the darker black line. I apologize, I don't have a mouse here to show, but if I could just grab that mouse. So here is the conductivity range, and this is important because in membrane technology, we like to have clean water. Distilled water has a conductivity range of about 18 to 20. This is a little bit higher. The bar down here is a little bit hard to read, but this is 1800, about 2000, 2100. So you can see that about 300 or 400 feet down, the conductivity spikes, but then it comes back down to about the 710-foot range. And we thought we were going good. But All Webs, through a hydrogeologist, decided to drill a little bit deeper. And the take-home point here is the deeper we went, the better the water quality was. And we're down to about 1,300 on the conductivity range, which is far less than the 1,800 which we were experiencing prior. So what we're saying is by drilling deeper, especially with well 4R, we were able to get some better quality of water. Here is a little spreadsheet. It's not financial, but certainly hopefully we fulfill the spreadsheet checklist for today. And what I'd like to just show you is here's the
Jury's
CD.
still out, Vinny,
Yeah.
sorry.
Here's the CDM.
A sheet with a lot of numbers and boxes doesn't necessarily qualify as
Okay.
a spreadsheet, just to.
Well, hopefully I do justice in trying to make sense of a bunch of numbers on here, but here's the CDM report from 2015. We looked at the gallon per minute. More specifically, we looked at the gallon per minute per foot, which is the specific capacity of a well. And that is to say, the higher the gallon per minute per foot, the less work that pump has to do because the more volume of water. And what we wanted to just identify is, there was obviously back in 2005 a great amount of water, over 1,000 gallons per minute available, but the specific capacity of those wells is really reduced anywhere from, about 16, 17 to about 24, even 30, 36 are the highest for well 3. We did some intermediate testing in 07, 2013, and 2013, as well as 2017. But in 2018, 17-18, we compiled the results to look at where we were with the existing wells and where we were with the new wells. And so the blue wells were the ones that we were looking at because the reduction in the pumping capacity, sub 1,000 GPM, as well as the very low specific capacity of those wells, around 19, 14. But if you look at well 7, over 80, and specifically well 4, 132, we basically wanted to say that the specific capacity of that well is close to 10 times our other existing wells. So for new well 4R, by going deeper, not only did we get better water quality, but we actually have more water available per foot than we do at the 710-foot range. And that's really the take-home message is the highlighted areas in yellow showing the great increase in the water available to be pumped at also per foot. So tabular-wise, it's a little bit better to show that, the specific capacity of the existing wells on the left versus the new wells 7 and 4 with a great increase with the 2 new recent wells. So going back to my original 2D area here is we wanted to take the existing wells that are down to at least this level, and that's where All Webs had been contracted initially, if you recall, in 2016, is to come back in to do some rehab work, acidification of this area, to open up the pores and restore the specific capacity of that well in some way, shape, or form. But after the performance increases and the testing for well 4R, it's recommended by our hydrogeologist and Kimley Horn Associates through a letter that was attached to the agenda item to possibly go deeper to try to get that better water quality and more water at that lower level.
Spreadsheet?
I don't know. So here we have some options. We can rehabilitate the wells only, which was what was in the original work order with All Webs from 2016, and that was previously approved by the Board of County Commission. We pulled that number out. It's just over $550,000. We may have a temporary marginal increase in the pumping rate by just doing the rehabs. We would still need to pull the wellhead. We would still need to do the downhole logging, video logging, to make sure the casing is good shape, to make sure that we do an assessment before the rehab work is done. But certainly that is one option. And so if that option were approved by the board, we would not have to move forward with staff recommendation. The second option is to deepen the wells based on what we had found with well 4R. And that would entail Kimley Horn Associates for work order number 3 for some engineering service and additional hydrogeologic oversight of the well contractor, which we've been pretty happy to date based on what we've seen, as well as contractor change order for close to the amount that I had listed earlier, but that's additional amount from what they've already been contracted for to basically pull the wellhead, downhole video, which we already have, but then to actually get a bit in there and actually go deeper and chase that better water quality and quantity at a little bit further down. Or we can re-advertise. Staff did not recommend the third option to re-advertise since the well contractor has been performing pretty well. We've noticed that most well contractors today are pretty busy, and this would just set us back in terms of time. And certainly it's an option that we could do, but we did want to impress upon the board that we went back to our folks and made sure that the unit cost pricing that was used in 2016 is being held today. We did beat them up a little bit in terms of some of the deducts as far as mobilization, not to charge us again since they already are on site. But certainly it's an option that should be considered, but certainly staff is looking to recommend option 2. So with that being said, staff would recommend that the board approve work order number 3 under the CCNA agreements with Kimley Horn Associates and request the Board of County Commissioners to authorize the chairman to execute Kimley Horn Associates work order number 3 in the amount of $84,876. And secondarily, approve change order number 2 to the well contractor, All Webs Enterprises, to deepen existing wells S2, S3, S5, and S6, and request the board to authorize the chairman to execute the change order number 2 on their behalf for a sum of $551,160. Certainly there are some caveats. This is not guaranteed. There's always, like this old house, you never know what you're going to find, but I think we're pretty optimistic based on the performance of the well contractor that if we can pull the wellhead, do the downhole logging, confirm the alignment of the casing, we should be able to make a good determination to at least go a little bit deeper to go after some better water and better quality. That's going to be able to then reduce some of the operation and maintenance dollars needed for the pumping costs, as well as reduce some of the stress on the membranes at the South County RO. So if you have any questions, I'm available.
Very good. Commissioners? Commissioner Fleischer?
I just want to thank you, Mr. Chairman. All right, so the proposed project will deepen the well. Is the exact depth calculated, or are we looking for better water so there'll be no change orders required? If we don't find it, we may have to go a little deeper?
Well,
Do we have latitude?
yes. So we will be taking real-time conductivity testing and water quality testing as the well contractors on site. So having a hydrogeologist to help us, we're going to look at a couple things. We're going to look at whether or not there's a high sand content. There's an indicator called SDI, silt density index, and we want to have an SDI at or below 1 because we don't like to bring in a lot of junk to the membrane. So we're going to look at the water quality, and we're going to look at the availability. But we estimate, based on what 4 has been drilled to, a rough idea of where that depth is. We don't know the final depth, but we certainly will be in the range of the change order to a certain allowable depth based on what we had for well 4.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Solari?
If I understood the spreadsheet, using the word loosely, correctly, I can see the benefits to it. And I'd just like to note that this is an enterprise fund, so anybody listening, we wouldn't be using tax dollars to do this. We'd be using basically an account that's already existed and paid for in the utility department. And to me, this is part of basically an overall renewal and replacement program, which I think has served the citizens of Indian River County very well. And I'll note that it's been brought before this board's attention a number of times that we haven't increased rates in the water and sewer department since 1999. And I think part of that is because it has been a very well-run system. So all that being said, I'd be happy to move staff recommendation on both points.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Solari, second by Commissioner Fleischer. Any debate on the motion? Anyone from the public that wishes to comment on the motion before us? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries 5-0. Thank you, Vinnie.
Great presentation.
Moving to the county attorney matters, we have the federal lobbying concerning All Aboard Florida / Brightline. Mr. Reingold.
Thank you very much. On August 14, 2017, I executed an agreement with McDermott, Will & Emery for the firm to represent Indian River County in federal lobbying relating to All Aboard Florida and Brightline. On January 23, 2018, the board voted to extend that agreement for an additional 6 months. This agreement, which is for 6 months for $50,000, expires at the end of July. As the board is aware, McDermott, Will & Emery was able to get a hearing before the House Subcommittee on Government Operations concerning the private activity bonds needed to fund the Brightline project. The hearing was a huge success. Since the hearing, Chairman Meadows and Congressman DeSantis, Gates, Mast, and Posey have written a letter to U.S. DOT Secretary Chow stating that they are deeply troubled by U.S. DOT's position. It's important that Indian River County continue the federal lobbying effort. Late last week, TC Palm reported on Brightline's recently filed quarterly unaudited financial statements. The short report indicates that during the first quarter of 2018, Brightline ticket revenue was $663,667, with a total of 74,780 passengers. That report indicates that the company made a gross profit of $590,000 in ticket sales. That's $590,000 in ticket sales gross profit and an operating loss of over $28 million. Additionally,
Can you repeat that, Dylan?
absolutely, sir.
Whole thing?
So their gross profit, as indicated, was on ticket sales was $590,000.
So they had cost of ticket sales, so that was like the 3 people selling tickets? And then all the revenue went,
I'm not really sure how they did the gross profit analysis. They stated how much they made in their sales, then deducted out about $170,000 or so, but that they indicated that they had $28 million operating loss. Additionally, if you do the math, the revenue per trip is about $9 per trip. None of this math lines up with the October 2017 ridership and revenue study, which was used to justify the $600 million in bonds for phase 1 of the project. The study had forecasted over 1 million riders in 2018 and over 2 million riders in 2019. So Brightline doesn't even hit the $100,000 ridership number in the first quarter of 2018, but yet their prediction was making 1 million riders total for the year and over 2 million next year. And as for the revenues, the study had predicted over $20 million in 2018 and over $60 million in 2019. And yet Brightline could not even hit $1 million in the first quarter.
oh, no, they hit 28 million.
I'm sorry. In operating losses, yes, they did hit the 28 million in operating losses in the first quarter. And the ridership numbers show that the Palm Beach Post article that came out, and based upon their tracking in April of 2018, that it was basically about on target, finding that about 20% of the seats are filled. So, you know, it's not surprising that Brightline hasn't been very vocal about their numbers. I looked at their press releases this morning on their website. They had an article about a mentorship program relating to barber shops. They had they noted their intent to try to get another governmental contract to get from Tampa to Orlando, and then they had something about the national the pump day. But certainly nothing in their press releases about their ridership numbers. Additionally, yesterday, NBC6 in Miami, last night actually, had ran an article concerning the safety of Brightline. And I certainly can just pull out some of the quotes from NBC6's article. And that Brightline was, quote, informed last month that they appear to be falling behind schedule to fully implement a technology called Positive Train Control by the end of the year. And that Brightline last month requested it be allowed to have the train fully running, or the system fully running, on only 10 miles of the 67 miles, which is, as the article indicates, about 15% of the track. And FRA is reviewing this. And I take that in context of the 2015 testimony by the then President Michael Reininger, which said, quote, "To start, nothing is more important than enhanced public safety. The infrastructure improvements we are adding to the entire corridor will bring our system to compliance with the highest applicable safety and regulatory standards in existence. And that will make us the only rail corridor in the United States that will be in compliance with all of these highest of standards, and therefore we believe the states." So I'll go back to the NBC6 article from last night, in which Brightline was told by the Federal Railroad Administration that they were falling behind schedule on implementing this Positive Train Control, and that they were only going to do it on, their proposal was to only do it on 10 miles. I want to be very clear that this is important, because Brightline has convinced various governmental agencies, FDFC, Army Corps of Engineers, St. John's, South Florida, USDOT, Orange County, that this project is in the public interest because it will bring millions of riders and have all of the necessary safety features. This project is not in the public interest. All of this to say is there's still more work to be done on the federal side. Thus, I recommend that the board extend the contract for another 6 months. Additionally, as I noted in the backup, the cost to set up the hearing in April exceeded the cost that had been agreed to by the board. Because of the success of the hearing, I recommend that the board at least pay an additional portion. I recommend $10,000, which is just simply a portion of the costs that were spent to get that hearing. With that, I turn it back over to the chair and anyone from the public who has any comments.
Thank you. Commissioner Solari, I believe, might have a comment.
Thank you very much. First, I'll just note on the positive train control and the fact that it's a little bit behind schedule, I just want to note that that is consistent with every other piece of Brightline, so it shouldn't be surprising. And if you take the ridership numbers and the ticket revenue, that actually does come out to a good $8.88 per rider. And I think that we have to ask, though, if they use Amtrak accounting, which includes the food and beverage in the ticket revenue prices. So that may actually get what citizens might call the ticket price down a little bit lower. And the great thing about that is one of the Brightline people are quoted as saying that this exceeds expectation or exceeded expectations. So you have to wonder about that. You've got Brightline's Louis Berger ridership. And is Mr. Berger still in jail? But his study shows that an average Fort Lauderdale to West Palm Beach fare of $29.90 was what was to be expected. So one's got to ask how $8.88 per fare, less than one-third the ridership fare study fare actually exceeds expectations. And if you look at some of the numbers, if they're talking about actually doing better in the future, you could double their ridership each quarter for the full year, and you'd end up with revenue of about $11,500,000. So basically, if the other expenses are consistent, this puts Brightline on track to lose about $100 million this year. And it appears that this does not include any interest or principal payments on the debt. And the interest payments alone would be roughly $34 million annually. And interestingly, on those quarterlies, it shows that Brightline has $59,000 in unrestricted cash on its balance sheet. $59,000 in unrestricted cash. And its restricted cash barely matches its current liabilities. So things are really going very well. Clearly, three conclusions you can take from this is, first, this is not a company that Warren Buffett would invest in. And it appears that Brightline very, very badly needs the second private activity bond tranche of $1.15 billion very, very badly and very, very soon, probably within the next 6 months. And I would speculate that the bond market understands Brightline's needs and will price the bonds accordingly. And finally, if the March 31st, 2018 quarterly numbers exceeded expectations, one can only guess at how very, very low Brightline's expectations were when they started this project. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Is there a motion in there anywhere?
I would be very happy to move staff recommendation with this.
We have a motion from Commissioner Solari, second by Commissioner Flesher, and this is to continue the federal lobbyist contract that we have for another 6 months, plus an additional $10,000 to cover some additional costs of the hearing. Jason?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And just one more point on that is, Brightline has argued, we're just a private business trying to run our private business here. No government subsidies. We all know that the private activity bonds are a government subsidy, but I won't belabor that point. But just to think about that, this is a business that has already sold $600 million in bonds. Looks like they've invested north of $1 billion, and the revenue they have to show for it is $768,000. and they're on pace, okay, for $3 million in a year, but any business plan where you've laid out $1 billion and you can't bring in $3 million a year in revenue is not a business that makes sense. It's not going to work as a private business without a government subsidy. De facto, it will either fail or they're going to have some kind of government subsidy, because this is not a business that makes sense in the private sector and the free market. So just wanted to mention that point, that clearly this is not a profit-making venture on its own without government subsidies or handouts.
So Jason, I got to ask you, you being the financial expert on the dais, if you were one of those bondholders, how would you be sleeping tonight? One of the bondholders from the $600 million tranche, and you got these quarterly.
Not well, and I think both Dylan and Commissioner Solari have hit on that. These aren't reaching their forecast. Something from the official statement of the bond issue was that they were going to have fair revenue of $96 million. Now that's in 2020, but in 2018, in their bond sales documents, they were supposed to reach 40% of that. So that's, maybe 35 million. They won't hit 10 million. I'll wager a fair amount this year. And they were projecting near 40 million in revenue. So if I was holding these bonds, I'd be concerned about it.
There's also, I guess Brightline is consistent because they did overcommit and underperform from the early onset. I believe we heard that they were going to be traveling through our county at 100 miles an hour by 2017. Yep. So I don't think that's anticipated around the corner either. So I think their calculations or spreadsheet is far off than they had anticipated. I wanted to say that Councilor gave an excellent account of his ride for the day with Brightline, and I wish we had recorded it because it was spectacular. Council, would you like to share just a cameo before Chairman calls the question? About your experience, about the abundance of activity and the excitement?
Yeah, I actually have some photos of it. My recollection is that there were maybe 20 riders when I took the train, in a train that holds about 248 seats. So it was actually, maybe it was a couple more than 20. So I remember it was about 10% ridership on the trains that I took.
And I had gone down to a conference and was understood that I would have the opportunity to have that same experience. Unfortunately, I got to see the train station, and train stations I'm pretty familiar with, bearing in mind of where I was born and raised and worked. So it wasn't an exciting factor, but I didn't see any train activity. So I appreciate your input as well. Thank you.
I know one thing is that they're increasing on, and that's the death toll. What are they up to now? Is it 8?
You look at the side of the train. They have.
Yeah, I believe they're at 8 deaths so far.
Okay.
So that's basically one death for every 10,000 riders. And so that information on positive train control makes you feel really good, because they're actually in, at least in terms of speed and everything else, the safest portion of their tract. So, I mean, we can really be happy with, or have great expectations about what's going to happen to life and limb when they get up through Indian River County at 110 miles per hour.
Okay, well, I think we've, Commissioner Zork, you want to chime in?
And not just to talk about Brightline, but while we were in Orlando, I did take the opportunity to camp out at a Sunrail station in Orlando on Thursday evening and a bit on Friday. I wanted to see some of their safety measures in place, and they do have some nice ones over there. But one train boarded a total of 3 passengers at a station in a very busy part of town in the Winter Park area. The second train, 2 people got off and nobody got on. And this was a Thursday afternoonish time. So I don't know what their ridership numbers are either, but those are very large trains and very few people getting on and off. So maybe it's a trend of these intercity rails.
Thank you. Anyone from the public wish to comment on the motion before us? Mr. Paladin, welcome.
Morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Joseph Paladin, President of Black Swan Consulting, also President of Land Coast Building. And also, I'm considered to be a rather knowledgeable businessman in the area. And there's nothing intelligent I could add to that conversation that Commissioner Solari had already said. And I think it's just sad that anybody could think this is a positive project. And I support staff's recommendation. And I'd just like to be in the room when these geniuses sat around and tried to sell this as a positive idea. I think that would be very entertaining. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? We have a motion by Commissioner Solari, second by Commissioner Flesher. All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries 5-0.
Thank you very much.
That would move us to Commissioner Zork, but I don't see Mayor Howell yet. Did you
Right,
want to proceed or
I
wait a
just,
little bit longer?
I just received a note from him that he is running behind for us to go ahead and move forward, so we can take up the item now, if you please.
We will then move to item 14E under Commissioner Matters. Commissioner Zork, you have the floor, sir.
Yes, thank you. A few weeks ago, the City of Vero Beach passed a resolution in support of the Aviation Boulevard and pursuing a DEO grant application to, as a potential funding source to move this project up on the construction schedule. Right now, it doesn't have a planned date to build from the US 1 to 43rd Avenue piece. On the resolution that's attached, you'll see the language that the city used. Couple of things in looking at the project. The county has been an active participant in a number of areas. If we can go to the next slide and see if our yellow indicators, okay. These yellow dots indicate projects that are either in the works by the county or the city or have been completed by the county or the city. We can go back, flip back one page again. So along with asking the commission, will we consider doing a similar resolution in support of the DEO grant? The grant application itself, in my opinion, in reading grants that have been awarded and have gone through the process with the DEO office, if the grant application was jointly submitted, the project funds that the county has either already paid or will be making improvements to segments at or on the Aviation Boulevard would give it more skin in the game on cash that's already either been committed or will be committed to the project. This in no means am I asking that we as the county are contributing any additional funding to what we have already committed in the past, the $1.2 million for the design of Indian River Boulevard, the projects that are in the works at 43rd Avenue in State Road 60, 43rd Avenue and Aviation. Those are things that are in the pipeline to be done. So along with the resolution would then also be that when the grant application is written, that it be written in such a fashion that the county's contributions that have already been made or are in the process of being made would be counted in the application, and would also ask that if some of county staff could assist in some of the wordsmithing of the grant as we've looked at it from a number of angles to where seeing what's been awarded by the governor, there is certainly some things that I think help it read and work better. Be happy to answer any questions on the resolution first, and then also on the concept of this being a joint DEO application, but the county would not be contributing any additional funds and would not be building the road. It would just be for the purpose of helping the city's DEO grant application score better by being able to count the county projects on the application.
Just a technical point, Commissioner, I think on that item number 2, that should be IRC, not IRS.
Oh, you are correct.
So that, Indian River County, okay.
We might be dealing with the IRS.
Commissioner Solari.
In the past, when we were talking about Aviation Boulevard, one of the things that seemed to, if I'm remembering correctly, slow the project down was the fact that the City of Vero Beach didn't want to contribute certain pieces of right-of-way, which would have got the project going. Has the city decided to contribute that right-of-way yet?
I think there was three major items. One was the crossing agreement for Aviation Boulevard and the FEC tracks. They have committed to accepting that road as their maintenance obligation. Secondly, on the right-of-way, I believe there's been some of the right-of-way pieces have been worked out. There is still some right-of-way for drainage purposes on the eastern segment of the roadway that still have to go through an FAA approval process to see is the proposed drainage where it's shown to be used, will the FAA sign off on it or not? I think the city is willing to move it forward, but the FAA has final approval as they do with stormwater tracks near active runways.
Most of the right-of-way I'm remembering is more to the western portion from around the Dodgertown area, around there. And that was where the holdup was in the past. So before I'd support this, I'd want to know that the city was now going to actually be contributing some of the missing pieces to the project.
Okay, no, because those are essential to having the roadway being able to be built. Sure. I know that has been discussed at some prior meetings, but we can have either Dylan reach out to City Manager O'Connor and get some type of confirmation that they are willing to commit these additional right-of-way pieces. Some of them were right-of-way corner clips that I know had been built into some of modified lease agreements at the airport for some of their tenants, but I don't know about all of them, but we should get an answer.
Bigger pieces than that, but.
Right.
So, and given that we'll have some time, could we then ask staff to take a look at what would be agreeing to and see if there are any other questions that we'd want answered before we committed to something like this?
Sure.
That'd be appreciated, thank you.
Yeah, because the city resolutions is kind of a broad paintbrush, just kind of highlighting some economic things going on. So I would concur with Commissioner Sawyer. I think, what we would do today is to give staff the direction to work with the city on a resolution, but that it would come back to us for a final adoption to make sure some of our concerns are addressed.
And then we can get some better understanding or a position of where the city's at on the right-of-way dedication on the north. I think it was some of the north side of Aviation on the curve there by historic Dodgertown that needed to be committed.
Right, and then just, from my general point of view, I don't have any problem, working with the city to move this forward. I know recently with Elite and some things going on, that this is kind of jumped up on their priority. But certainly want to make sure that the right-of-way issues are taken care of and before we do a final resolution of support.
Sure.
Okay. Commissioner Zorc, if that's your motion incorporating the words of the chairman, I'd be happy to second it.
Sure. Thank you.
I have a few questions.
Yes, Commissioner Adams.
Is there a reason why you'd rather have a resolution than just a letter of support?
In looking at some of the other applications that the DEO has awarded, they seem to have both letters of support and resolutions. The feeling was that resolutions seem to have more weight behind it, but probably either communicates the same message.
Okay, and then if we're gonna ask staff to look into this a little bit more and bring it back, I would want to understand specifically what staff's role would be in the wordsmithing, because that could mean a lot of different things depending on who's interpreting it. It could be staff's writing it for the city, it could be just proofreading, it could be cooperative and collaborative. So I think we need to understand what the intention is for staff's time and what staff would be doing. Mm-hmm. And also, is the county going to have a grant in this category that this might impact?
I don't think we have anything on the horizon, but I'll let Jason answer.
I think this might fit in the intermodal type area. I can't say we'll reach out to city staff. I think the right-of-way is a good question. I know that's something that held up the project when the county was managing it years ago. One of the positives here is this is a mechanism for the city to do the project and fund the project, because our position is that we're doing Aviation Boulevard east of US 1 and Aviation Boulevard 26th Street to the west of 43rd Avenue, and that as long as there's not county funding involved in that, it would be helpful. I would say they probably have more incentive to take care of to provide the right-of-way since they're managing the project now than they seemed to when the county was trying to get it done years ago. But we we don't have a competitive project right now with this.
So when you bring that back, if you could just more fully flesh out staff's role and county's role, that would give me a better ability to understand what it is that you're
Okay.
asking us to do.
So we have a motion from Commissioner Zork, second by Commissioner Slaughter, to direct staff to work with the city and bring back a draft resolution for future board action, particularly looking at the right-of-way and the level of staff involvement.
And I think I'd also like to just reaffirm the crossing responsibility if we're going to ask them for a couple of things. And they have indicated, City Manager O'Connor, that the city will agree to the crossing maintenance agreement at Aviation, but we might as well get that covered and reaffirmed
Sure, that'd be
at the
great.
same time.
Okay. Anyone from the public wish to comment on the motion before us? Seeing none, all in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries 5-0. Thank you, Commissioner Zork. We now move on to the Solid Waste Disposal District. We have the minutes of May 8, 2018.
Approval.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Flesher, second by Commissioner Adams. All in favor signify with aye. Any opposed? That carries 5-0. And now for the presentation we've been waiting all morning for. This is the expansion of the School District of Indian River County Recycling Program. We have Stephanie Fonville here, and I think a whole slew of waste management and school district folks. So y'all come on up. Might as well stand behind Stephanie and support her. And
Oh, apparently just me. Well, good morning and thank you very much. I am really excited to talk about this. We're going to talk a little bit about the Indian River County School Recycling Pilot Program, kind of how that went, the successes of it, and then particularly we're going to focus on the hopes to expand this pilot program to some of the other public schools in the county. So with me today, I do have Dr. Rendell, the superintendent of the school district, and a couple of other folks that are helping to represent the school district and showing their support. So I'll do a brief presentation, and then I will turn it over to them and let them add their comments and see if there's anything that I missed. As you know, we had the IRC School Recycling Pilot Program. We launched that in January of 2018. Several of you were able to make it out to some of the schools, so we really appreciated that. It was a lot of fun. The goal for this program was to provide the tools for campus-wide recycling at the selected schools. So we went to Pelican Island Elementary School, we went to Rosewood Magnet Elementary School, we went to Storm Grove Middle School, and the Vero Beach High School Freshman Learning Center. And essentially we brought recycling containers to their classrooms, to their offices, to the outdoor areas, to the hallways, and also in the cafeterias. So we really did a robust campus-wide recycling program at these schools to try to increase recycling there. So the goal was, if it was successful, this would serve as a model to be expanded to the other schools. So that was our goal basically from the beginning. So the big question was it successful? Was this a successful program? What did we consider to be successful? So the things that we were looking for with this program was an increase in recycling. We were looking for a reduction in garbage. We were looking for minimal contamination. Specifically looking at, we did not want to see recyclables being bagged, being tossed in the dumpster in bags. We didn't want to see any of those recycling containers being used as an extra garbage can. We knew that there would be a little bit of contamination, especially as the kids are learning, but we were really looking for those key things. Another fact that we're looking for positive feedback from the students, the staff, and the teachers. This is what's going to show you whether this program is going to continue on and be sustainable. And finally, I added this one on at the end, actually, but seeing an interest from the other schools. They heard about this pilot program. If anyone reached out to us, we consider that to be a factor of it being successful. So I'm going to run through these real quick to show whether this was happening or not. So an increase in recycling, that was a big key factor. We absolutely did see an increase in recycling. Recycling was picked up every other week before the pilot program. As soon as we put the pilot program in place, they actually had to quickly increase it to once a week because there was so much recyclable material coming in. So that was essentially a doubling of the recycling that we were seeing at these pilot schools. So using the container size and an estimate of about 95 pounds per cubic yard, we estimated that over 5,000 pounds of recycling is being diverted from those 4 pilot schools combined each month. So looking at those 4 pilot schools, there's an additional 5,000 pounds of recyclables being diverted each month. So that was a very positive feature that we saw. So in conjunction with that, if you're seeing more recycling, you're hoping to see a similar reduction in garbage. We were hoping to get a little bit of fine-tuned garbage information from each school with the holidays going on and the busyness of implementing this program. We didn't quite get those numbers, but we were able to interview the school district's trash technician. Mr. Jeff Cox is the gentleman that goes around to each school every single day and empties the garbage containers. He empties the garbage dumpsters every single day. So we were able to interview him. He said that he was very surprised at the reduction in garbage that he was seeing at those schools. He said he knew when the program started, and he was very surprised at how much waste was reduced from those schools. So from his estimates, he said there was a waste reduction about 45% at Pelican Island Elementary School, just looking into the dumpsters, about 50% reduction at Rosewood Magnet Elementary School, about a 30% reduction at Storm Grove Middle, and about a 35% reduction in waste at the Freshman Learning Center. So that was really positive and great to see, and it really gave us confidence that yes, at least 5,000 pounds of garbage has been reduced from the waste stream, if not more than that. So those were two of the really key factors to tell us whether it was being successful or not. The other ones were minimal contamination. We did work with the custodial staff through this whole process to explain the importance of emptying out those plastic bags. I had some folks that were checking the dumpsters periodically to see if there were plastic bags in there, and we are pretty confident that the plastic bags are being properly discarded. So the recyclables are being emptied and properly discarded. We did send out surveys to the teachers and the students after the program had been in place for about a month and a half. And one of the questions we asked the teachers was, did it look like there was proper recycling going on in their classrooms? And the majority of them said, yes, the students are getting it, they're recycling properly. A couple here and there that we're still having some issues, but we'll continue to work with them. So we are having discussions of how we can continue to educate them, continue to put programs in place to teach the kids what is and isn't recycling, but they do seem to be getting it, so that's really encouraging. Positive feedback from the students and staff. As I mentioned, we did send out surveys. The response from the surveys were overall very, very positive. The only kind of negative thing that we'd heard from the students was that it was taking longer in the cafeterias to dispose of their materials, which we expected. But some of those students even said that, you know, they were helping the environment, so I guess that's okay. So I took that as kind of a positive as well. So besides that, they're all very positive. The kids were excited to be able to do their part for the environment. The surveys that we sent out to the teachers, over 90% of the teachers strongly recommended expanding this program to the other schools, and were asking if that was going to happen. So very positive response from the schools, from the teachers, from the students. We also did, after the program was done, we met with Dr. Rendell and a couple of other folks at the school district. They agreed that it was a successful program, things were going well, and we had their full support of trying to expand the program. So they are on board with that as well, as you can see from their presence here. So thank you for coming. Also an interest from the other schools. I received multiple phone calls. The school district office told me they've received multiple phone calls from other schools, other teachers, asking if this program can be brought to their school as well. I've sat in on a couple of conversations at a few of the schools. They're implementing a recycling program, and they're doing it based on the models that we made for the pilot program. So I had an opportunity to sit with them and just tell them what we did and how we worked through some problems. So they're already reaching out to us about expanding the program. So we did consider all of these being reached, our goals being reached. So was the program successful? We really felt that yes, it was. So then that would mean that the next step would be expansion. I did a little bit of research and I looked at how many tons of garbage was coming into the landfill from the school district. On average, over the last couple of years, it's about 1,560 tons of garbage. That's just regular garbage. And the school district received a letter from their recycling hauler indicating that they were recycling about 80 tons of material was going to be recycled. So really, what this shows is that there really is an opportunity to increase recycling. We have 1,500 tons of garbage and only 80 tons of recycling. We really think that there's an opportunity there just to increase the recycling at our schools, to capture those tonnages, but also it's a great opportunity to really help those kids learn that recycling is important, which is something that they'll bring out into the community and help us as well. So there are about 16 more public schools that we're looking at to hopefully expand this program to, about 11 elementary schools, 3 middle schools, and the 2 high schools. So we're focusing on the public schools. So With something like this, there is a cost associated with it. Using the pilot programs and the items that we purchased for that, and kind of looking at how many students were at each of the schools, we came up with an estimate for what we thought the one-time total cost would be to basically provide the same recycling containers and the same equipment that we use at the pilot program. So expanding that to the other schools. The total one-time cost would be about $38,000. We did reach out and we actually received 2 in-kind donation commitments that will help reduce this cost. One of those in-kind donations was from Waste Management, so they're here with me today as well, somewhere. Yeah, there we go. So they have offered to basically donate 64-gallon carts for the cafeterias and 35-gallon recycling carts for the outdoor areas. That would be a savings of about $9,700 for this project. Recycle Across America provides recycling labels. Right now they can commit to donating about 400 recycling labels, which would be another savings about $700. In the future they may be able to donate more, but that's what they're committing to right now. So that does bring down the cost to about $27,600. So what we are here today looking at is we would like to propose that the SWID board consider a cost-sharing agreement with the School District of Indian River County to help with these costs, these one-time costs to cover the containers and the equipment that the custodial staff will need to pick up the material. So we're looking at covering half of those one-time costs. That'd be about $13,800. So today what we're looking at is the staff is recommending that the SWID board consider and authorize the 3 following items. First, conceptually approving to provide the 50% funding, which right now we're estimating to be $13,800, to cover half of the one-time cost for the containers and materials for the remaining 16 public schools. This is based on the report that we're receiving from the school district right now from Dr. Rendell and his staff for the expansion of this program. After that, to direct staff to work with Dr. Rendell to request the 50% funding match from the school district itself. To date, we have not been to the school board to discuss the pilot program, the successes of the pilot program. But tentatively, with the approval, we would consider going to the next school board meeting, which would be on July 26th. And then following that, upon agreement by the school district, to direct the staff to work with the county attorney's office to prepare a cost-sharing agreement to be approved by the school district, and then we'll come back to the SWID board at a future date to essentially agree and do that. So that's a little bit of a background and some recommendations. I would like to turn it over to the school district if you had anything you wanted to add.
Thank you, Stephanie. Good morning, commissioners. First of all, I just want to thank the commissioners and Stephanie and Himanshu and Waste Management for their support with the pilot project. It's been very, very successful. Those 4 schools have reduced the amount of garbage that they're sending to the landfill and increased the amount of recycling materials. And so if we were able to expand this to all of our schools, then that's going to again reduce the amount of garbage we're sending to the landfill and increase the amount of recyclable material. That would also help you reach your goal. You have some goals about increasing the amount of recyclable materials that you process countywide, and we're a big part of that. So we're really looking for your support as we want to expand this to the other schools. It's been a great partnership. The pilot was very successful, and we hope to increase it.
Dr. Rendell, why don't you go ahead and introduce your team members that are here as well?
Sure, absolutely. So I have Mr. John Teskey, who's the Assistant Superintendent for Operations, is back there. Bob Michael, who's our Director of Facilities and Plant Maintenance. And Kristen Maddox, who is our Public Information Officer. I think that's all who I brought.
Good. And so what do you think the odds are of you talking your board into agreeing with this?
I think it's very, very likely that we will support this expansion.
Very good, good. And then Waste Management, you want to come up and just say a word and introduce your team? Appreciate you guys' involvement and donation, so let's hear a little bit from you.
Thank you, Bob Dela Cruz, Waste Management, Operations Manager for Indian River County, and Kurt Hawker.
Yep, I'm the Territory Manager for the county.
Great.
We're more than proud to be part of the program for the recycling. We're really excited. We're looking forward for the expansion of the program and in any way of helping and educating the school district to increase the program and the volume of waste reduction.
Good, and thank you for your participation, donation. We appreciate that. So, commissioners, Commissioner Fleischer.
First and foremost, I want to thank you for the presentation. The numbers are very impressive. We recently got our assessment from the, what was it? What was the final number on that? How close are we?
I think we were 64%.
64%.
64%. I mean, we are getting there, folks. And, you know, main thing is, you know, the project is a great success. There's relationships. I'm very excited not to see the black styrofoam trays going into the landfill and the number 10 cans with or without the labels going in there. For years, that has been one of my concerns. Yes, Dr. Rendell, I did mention it a few times. But that's going away. And the real gain is the education value, because you are earmarking thousands of ambassadors that are going home, and they're not going to put up with anybody not recycling at the home. So this has a profound effect. I think the numbers, we are going to be the first county to be able to wow them up in Tallahassee. Maybe they don't have to alter that commitment because we can do it. So with that, I'm very excited to support this, and I'll move staff recommendation.
We have a motion from Commissioner Fleischer, second by Commissioner Adams, and just want to thank Stephanie for all your hard work on this and your collaborators on this. This, you know, I think this could be a model used throughout the whole state of you know, everybody working together, the public and private side, and really focus on this. So all of you, thank you very much for everything you've done here. I think it really shows Indian River County is a great place to be and all that. So, Commissioner Zork?
Yes, Stephanie, on your list of schools, it covers the remaining traditional public schools, but I didn't see any of the public charter schools listed, and I didn't know if you've reached out to them, and do they want to participate, and do we need to adjust the funding number for any of the charters?
We have been focusing mostly on these public schools, so we have not included the charter schools. We just wanted a place to start. So we did pick the pilot schools based on kind of these public schools, and this is where our focus is. So we haven't talked about that or discussed that. We just started with this location.
But I think going forward, we can look at that. We started out with the pilot schools. The next logical step was to expand it to the rest of the public schools, but we can obviously in the next step look at the charter schools.
Like some of them, I know, Imagine on 4th Street, there are over 800 students, which is a significant, I mean, they're not all small, but some of them are considerably large in their student count. So at some point when you, I don't know, if bring back a number later after you've had a chance to visit with with the charter schools, which they are public schools as well.
Yep.
Great, thank you.
I would love to see that.
All right, so we do have a motion and a second. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to comment on the motion before us? Seeing none, all in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries 5-0. Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you all for coming. Again, thank you for your support.
Thank you, Waste Management.
Thank you.
Commissioners, that concludes the agenda. I'd just like to wish everyone a happy and safe 4th of July. There will be a parade up in Sebastian tomorrow, and then fireworks both at Riverside Park in Vero Beach and up in Sebastian. So hope everybody enjoys the holiday. Be safe out there. Be considerate of your neighbors and dogs and veterans if you're lighting off your own fireworks. And be safe, but have a great, happy 4th of July. And Commissioners, if we conclude, we are adjourned.